Hi, my name is Miles Newman and I am your host. I am the Director of Training for AGOA. Welcome to our videos taken from our online training sessions. This video covers an update of our association from the President of AGOA Board, Pam Tuft. Then a look at how and why we need to keep focused on officiating from our Director of Rules and Mechanics, Paul Mercer. Then we're going to look at the available training resources available to you by our Director of Training, Miles Newman. We will then have a review of the current planning for football seasons in 2021 with AGOA Director, Greg Evers. Pam, can you please give us the update from the AGOA national perspective?
We'll just be really brief and just give you an idea about what's happening for AGOA at a board level and pretty much taking you back for the previous year. So this will be available to all members anyway in like our AGM reports that are coming up. But in the last year, obviously, Training Academy was updated again, which was, a big undertaking, as you can imagine, with Paul and Miles contributing heavily to making sure that our training modules are current with the rule changes. We don't have any for this next season, so that makes that task a little bit easier. My understanding is there's some background focus on trying to do some like referee specific modules and making sure those things are up to date. The big focus for us as a board over the last year has been to look at the way in which we're operating at that sort of governance level and making sure that there's some basically framework in place for any person that's contributing to AGOA, either on the board or even just as a member who's helping out with some of our policies, procedures and processes. Shane's not online with us tonight, but he really drove a lot of this and put a lot of work into developing this framework, which is still a work in progress, but it's given us a really good starting point, and it covered off, well, what is AGOA for? What's our mission, and then how do we sort of separate all of those sort of processes? I'll see if is the Excel spreadsheet popped up now.
Yes, it has.
Yep. So you can see it's quite big and it's involved, but it comes down to the different areas that our association covers for all of our members, which is our governance, our operations, our training and development, and also recruitment and retention being like a focus point that we're all kind of driving towards. So we've kind of gone through, looked at, what policies do we have already in place, what committees exist, and this is just the colour system you can see. So you see there's still some amber areas which we know are things that we need to work towards, and this has become sort of the roadmap for us. So I would say that's been a big part of what's happening in the background. In terms of women's development, that was something that we put in place probably 2 years ago. Well, probably even going back to, WAGL 2018 with having like a 5-year plan for getting more women involved. And we were fortunate enough to receive a grant from the Women Leaders in Sport area. And 3 of our female officials nationally got to participate in a Women's Sport Australia mentoring program. So we had myself, Courtney in New South Wales, and Karen from Victoria, who benefited from receiving a sporting mentor for a year. So that's something that, as a board, we were able to, that was championed by Tony Connor to be able to put that application in and give opportunities. So, that's something we would look at going forward, not only for women, but if there are grant opportunities for training and development for AGOA nationally. It's sort of been a new pathway that we've been looking down and was quite successful in this, first attempt. We got the website live, so that's sort of something that we achieved. The updating of that is something that we're trying to work on, and highlights how resources are always the key roadblock for volunteer organisations, is having people available to really contribute to those kind of tasks. We also got the YouTube channel up with a lot of historical footage, which is a really good, great reference point for seeing how far we've come as an association. This is kind of a little more casual, but working towards trying to find a local supplier for things like officiating polos on field and off field. So that's sort of a work in progress to sort of see if it's at a quality, but just trying to find avenues to make it a little bit easier for some officials to minimise the cost and make it easier for them to get some of their equipment locally. as we all know, the national tournaments were put on hold. So there was sort of a big steamroll planning of going ahead for nationals, and that sort of stopped for everyone. That was a national thing that sort of went on hold and, paused some opportunities for officials to sort of get together, learn from each other. And so that's part of, what Miles is driving here, is still trying to get that element of connectiveness and learning from each other nationally and not just within our own little state pockets. And finally, as I've gone through all of that quickly, we have our AGM coming up on Sunday, the 29th of August. So we called for director nominations, which I believe are closed now, and the further information will go out to members in the coming weeks about that. It's already been announced as it needs to be. So, within your own states, I would, encourage you all to speak to your local members. It'd be great to have attendance at that meeting, even if it just gives people an opportunity to talk outside of all of the official side of things. If you can encourage your members to attend the AGM, that would be really beneficial. And, I think New Zealand's, been involved in a lot of things. If that's of interest, I believe that's, something that you can attend as well, to sort of hear a little bit more about what's happening in the future of AGOA as the association. So that's me, guys. Questions, thoughts, happy with all the information?
So Pam, what did you personally get out of the mentoring program?
I have a local female mentor as part of that program, and the idea behind that is to have a connection with a female who is deemed to be in a leadership role within the sporting field, whichever one it is. It's obviously not specific to us. We're always going to be our little niche pocket of a sport, and being an official also sort of puts us in that. But the idea behind it and what I'm getting from that is working with someone who's already basically in a leadership position in the sporting field, women being kind of a bit more of a minority, and trying to just, understand how to I suppose hold your own and learn a bit of those kind of things when you're sort of dealing either at the board level, which is obviously something that's relevant to me. So that's sort of, and that's ongoing. So I've made that connection with that person, and that's an ongoing sort of mentor situation.
Thanks, Pam, for that. Thanks for that. Paul, staying engaged.
Yes, something is that needs to be self-driven. So essentially what I wanted to talk about here was how we can keep ourselves actively involved and our minds active and those sorts of things if we're in the unfortunate position of not having games to work, something we experienced in Victoria last year. So from a personal point of view, I found myself looking for games to watch, and obviously apart from the NFL and the college games on telly and those sorts of things, we're now in the fortunate position that a lot of our states have their games streamed either through the leagues or through the clubs themselves. And so I found that an excellent way to try and keep my head in the game by watching the games, watching the officials work, and looking at the way they do things and questioning myself and saying, how would I do that? How would I handle that situation? And that challenged me to not only think about my rules knowledge, but also obviously my mechanics knowledge. Would I have been in that position? Where would I have gone? What would I have done? What should I have done? So quite a few of those situations made me go to the rule book and say, oh yeah, I need a refresher on that. What's the rule on that again? I've gotten a bit slack because I'm not working games. So when you're not doing things on a regular basis, it takes a lot of self-discipline, I suppose, to make yourself get involved and engage with others. And another way of doing that is also to get together with people. You could create a study group to watch some game footage or test yourself with the various quizzes that you can find online, or the ones that I put on the Facebook group. So it's all things that need to be self-driven. You need to have the passion for officiating and the passion to want to, if you're not working games, at least keep yourself in the groove. And if you are working games, to obviously improve, particularly if you've got aspirations of officiating at the national level. So those are some easy, obvious ways that we can all stay engaged, either individually or with each other. And sometimes, for me, I like to get together with others and chew the fat over a couple of rules or pick holes in a particular rule or a particular mechanic or something like that, and make sure we're all on the same page and make sure we're all thinking about what it is we should be doing. And the key is not to be afraid to be wrong in anything you think or say, and be prepared to ask questions. We all know that old chestnut about the only dumb question is the one you don't ask, but that's true. Nobody's going to look down upon anybody who asks a question to improve their own knowledge. And we don't all know everything, and we all get things wrong, and collectively we can help each other. And that's the approach we've got to take. One other thing I think that is important, particularly is, say, if you want to progress and move to the next level, is find a mentor who can help you. And there are a lot of good people out there who have been around for a long time around the country in this sport, and they've got good experience and generally a good knowledge. And you can bounce ideas off them. You can talk to them about things that happen in your games or things that you've seen in games. You can help develop your understanding of why things are done a particular way or why things aren't done a particular way. And you can only benefit from that. And you'll find that there are a lot of people out there who are more than happy to help, but they don't want to be pushy. They need you to ask for that help. So don't be afraid to do that. The other thing is, consider doing your own review of a game. So if you're watching a game that's being streamed, try and look at it from an official's perspective. Enjoy the game by all means, but look at it from an official's perspective and try and look at it with a critical eye. So saying, is what they're doing in accordance with the rules or the mechanics? If it's not, do I know what the correct rule or enforcement is? Do I know what the correct mechanics were? And can I help myself and also my colleagues in my state and also perhaps our colleagues nationally to improve our overall knowledge, to raise the overall standard of consistency by raising issues, whether it be film clips for review or just points for discussion. Hey, I've got this play that happened in the game last week. I don't understand why this was the outcome, or I don't understand why this was the enforcement, or here's an unusual play. How should we have handled this? All of these are things that will keep you engaged. It will help you focus on your rules and mechanics. And if you share it around, it'll help others to benefit as well. And as an adjunct to that, I'd like to set up perhaps a link where people can log details of anything that they've seen on any games they are watching, so that we can then say, well, is there a play in this? Is this a clip that we can use for training and development and discussion that everybody will benefit from? It might be an unusual situation. It might be a particularly well-handled situation. But, whenever we watch a game, there's always something we can learn from, individually and collectively. And the last thing I wanted to mention was that I know it's tough in this era of lockdowns and people losing their jobs, having reduced incomes and all of these sorts of things. But particularly if your state is not working games and there are games in an adjacent state or somewhere else you can get to, consider whether you can possibly get to another state and participate in games there. I don't think there's a state in this country that wouldn't welcome an official from another state. We never have enough officials. We're always happy to have people who have the passion and the desire to want to participate, and you will always get games. And again, depending on where you go, you may find that the state are able to help out with accommodation and transportation and things like that. Won't be able to help you with airfares probably, but and I know there are lots of barriers to that. There's family, there's work, there's finances, all of these sorts of things. But it is always an option that whenever you are travelling or have the opportunity to travel, if there are games, bring your gear, because people will love to have you along. And it helps again develop us all nationally to make sure we're all performing to the same level and doing things consistently. So unless there are any other, and I'm happy to take other suggestions because I'm sure there are a lot of other things we can and people do to stay engaged. So Let's hear them.
I wouldn't mind actually just hearing, Paul, how you guys handled last year with the Victorian officials. After, did you do things during the season or off season? How are you looking at, did you lose some through not being officiating last year when they're coming back for this year? Just what you guys, I guess the challenges that you went through last year, not having a season and trying to retain, officials that aren't actively officiating games.
Yeah, it's a very good question, Greg, and a pertinent point. To the best of my knowledge, we haven't lost anyone this year because we didn't have a season last year. We've got a few officials who are sitting out this year because of COVID concerns. We've got one official who is talking of retiring, although we're trying to make him see the error of his ways. And that's perhaps, no, and that's perhaps because there were no games to officiate last year, so you just kind of lose the connection with it. I have to say we didn't really do very much last year. Individually, people did. They would still watch games, share plays, have some discussion, have chats about things, but as an association, we didn't do anything. And I think it's fair to say that most people were pretty disengaged last year. And to be fair, it was hard to get engagement. We did try to engender it, but it was hard to get it because of the things that I mentioned. We were in lockdown, people were potentially losing jobs or having reduced income, and there was a lot of, I guess, angst, and people were demotivated. So those are all sort of things to try and guard against. But the only way you can do that is to make the effort to be engaged, to engage.
Recruit and retrain and retain officials. Not having a season impacts on your recruitment and on your retention. So it's a double hit in both sides, which means that when you do have games, you've got a lot more work to catch back up to where you want to get to.
And there's two other components to that. And one is that you've just reminded me that we did have an official who came on board at the start of 2020 as a new recruit. And then, of course, we didn't have a season in 2020. So he's now disappeared off the face of the earth. He just doesn't respond to contact now. And we've had, at the start of this year, we had 5 or 6 potential new recruits. And, we haven't had any opportunity to engage with them physically, to get together with them or meet them. We haven't been able to get out to scrimmages. We haven't even been able to get out to do walkthroughs. We haven't been able to have any formal classroom sessions other than a couple of online ones. And we haven't been able to give them any hope of games because we just didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, we now have as much certainty as you can have that we will have a season at some point. So they know that that's close, but we still haven't met half these people. And the other important thing to consider is that, as we know, we're an aging group. I'm not just referring to myself and Miles. And one of the problems I'm expecting us to have this year is that for some of our officials, they haven't worked in the best part of 18 months and they've done no physical activity for 18 months. And that's going to be a huge challenge. I'm expecting a few sort of soft tissue injuries for the officials in the first few weeks of the season.
I think, Paul, it's not only an officiating problem. I mean, Darren, you're now coaching, and you've seen this from the top level of GA. I would suspect that we've not just got a problem with gridiron, but probably with a lot of sports we've got this problem where the sports community is losing contact with its participants. Darren?
Yeah, definitely. You've heard that on a number of levels in various sports. So I definitely agree with that. And, some people just find it's too hard, or this is going to be their last year, so I've hung up the boots. So it's a catch-22 not only for officials but also for players.
You can also see how much things like lockdown and whatnot impacts on soft tissue injuries. I mean, you even just have a look at the Olympics and the amount of injuries that they had because the athletes had to go into even just a 2-week lockdown. Yet we've got, amateur sports, people that just don't do anything for 6, 9, 12, now 18 months of the year, and they try and get out and start sprinting out on the field. There's bound to be a lot more injuries, and the fatigue factor will factor in, and then there'll be other safety issues that we'll need to obviously be on top of.
So anyway, look, I think it's something for us all to be very conscious of. I wanted to have the discussion around tonight, and I'll make sure that's included in the video when we trim this down to a nice short package that we put online for everybody else to see.
Yeah, can I just contribute? Like what Paul was
Please.
saying is something that, you know, we even did in WA, and we had a season. So we were really fortunate. So I realized we didn't have a lot of the struggles that others did, but, you know, we still found ourselves on the weekend where we had the timing opportunities to watch what was happening in Queensland, and we got to sit down and see the SA streamed games. And it's always good to see that perspective. When I came into this, I really got a sense there was this compartmentalized process of, well, that's what they do in that state and that's what they do. And I think that that's really shifting, and having ability to reach out to other people and see what they're doing, whether you can physically get there anymore, is just a benefit. And I think, I say it jokingly, but, you know, we'll sit there and become like couch referees. It's very easy to sit there and go, God, what did that take so long? What are they talking about? Like, but when you take away that side of it, it was a good way to kind of look at it and go, well, how could that be better? Like Paul said. So, you know, that's something that we did. You know, we'd sit down and watch games where we could for it if it was live streamed. It was a really great tool. And I would encourage anyone from the other states that, you know, perhaps don't know who to talk to about what they're watching, is that there's always a resource. And, you know, South Australia can seem a bit quiet on a national front, but, you know, Simon's a really knowledgeable person, and they do a lot of game breakdown. And I would be surprised if he wouldn't be open to an email from someone that goes, oh, I was watching your live stream, can you guys talk to me about this play? That he wouldn't reply. So it's just letting people know that that's out there. And, you know, Paul did game reviews for WA, you know, because he was able to do that. What a great other perspective for us. So it's not just what we see. And, you know, I would just, whoever's playing, if the live streams are there, I would encourage your officials to definitely just try and watch them. I mean, it's always disappointing that it's not you out there, and it's easy to just stop worrying about gridiron when, you know, you don't get to go on the field. But I thought it was a great thing for us last season to get to see so much more of what was happening elsewhere for that.
Simon's definitely one of the people I've got on the list to do one of the sessions in this series, Pam, on precisely that subject. I want to talk about the training resources. Anything, the first step is ask your training manager. And this is a general message, or send an email to training@ago.org.au. That'll get to me. I happen to be on Facebook, Miles Newman. Okay, the first major training resource is obviously the Officiating Academy. That's my own page showing what I've got up to look at. That's not what you will necessarily have. You will have what you've been assigned by your training manager. And don't forget, to everybody, there is a catalog behind that. And the catalog is all the training materials we've got there that you might just want to dip into. I'm going to turn off the scoring system. We're thinking about a leaderboard, and we might just kind of, and I will have chats to a few people and say, okay, how are we going to do this? We'll have a leaderboard for anybody who's kind of got in there and done some training materials. The last thing I just want to put up here, and I will post this onto the Facebook page. There's the various training resources I can think of off the top of my head. It's not a bad little list. First of all, you start off with the AGOA Academy. For the nickname, everybody calls it iSpring. Well, yeah, that's the tool set, but it's actually the AGOA Academy. That's what we were looking at just a minute ago. That's where all our training courses are for New Zealand, for Australia, the whole box and dice. We have a YouTube site of AGOA videos. There's not much stuff up there. I'm just going to speak to Paul Taylor about how I throw up some extra stuff. I think any game films we've got, we should throw on there, and it at least gives stuff that people can go and look at. I don't care if it's already on YouTube and we've got another copy in there. I don't think anybody will care. I've got about half a dozen videos. I've got Australia versus Tahiti and a few things like that. You can go and criticize all my officiating and the late Dave Sinclair's officiating on that one. Then we've got the IFF media stuff, which is all of Frank Christensen stuff. Some very good stuff, which you also happen to have in the AGOA Academy. That's where the original material is. There's all the stuff on sample plays. There's about 100 videos on there about sample plays. It's a great way to get your head back into stuff. Facebook, we've got two sites. We've got AGOA Training and Development. There's also Instant Replay. Instant Replay is Marco Sala from Europe. who's the training director for now for Europe. And that's been going about 4 or 5 years, and it's great stuff in there. And if you don't know it, you really need to get your head around that one. For the rules and the MOFO, there is my IFO. That's the IFO site where the electronic copies of the rules and the MOFO are. Rule 11 podcast. Probably I should defer to Greg Evers for this. I think he's already starred with these guys twice.
So is Frank, but that's all right. No, these guys are great. Obviously it's a bunch of US college officials, and we know that the NCAA and IFF are pretty close aligned. But they go into some of the rules really in depth, and it makes it a little bit clearer to understand some of the rules they've got on there, and some of the other officials they talk to are actually quite knowledgeable too. So it's definitely a good resource to get on.
And there's Referee Magazine. Referee these days a bit more. I think it's a bit more high school focused, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah, and it seems to be a lot. It's all US sports related too, and it's more story related. And updates and things as opposed to rules, but there's a lot of stories around what's going on in officiating over in the US. So
they also do a lot of good basic handbooks on philosophy, or how to apply rules and things like that. So that's cool.
Yeah. So as you said, Miles, it's predominantly oriented towards high school, but their rules, their football section each month focuses on a particular topic. It might be the work of managing the chain crew this month. It might be on scrimmage kick plays next month, and they usually have some little quizzes and casebook plays and those sorts of things, which are predicated on both college and high school rules. So it's certainly applicable in terms of the college rules, with a few variations from IFAF. So it's good from that point of view. And as you say, they have some good little booklets on philosophy and those sorts of things, which again predominantly are focused towards high school, but some of the philosophy stuff is certainly applicable to college.
Okay, so there's just some examples of the resources that are available, and you always have to put your slant on them. I mean, when we get the arguments about IFAF rules versus NCAA, frankly, 90% of our officials wouldn't know the differences. So we just say, use what's available, get your head around the rules. One of the sessions we're going to have in the next couple of weeks is Bob Barrett, as you can see here, is going to talk to us about the philosophy of the game. And he's going to bring it from West Coast USA to West Coast Australia. It's just a West Coast view of football, and he's going to do that for us in the next couple of weeks. And it'll be one of these sessions here. So really, that's the resources we've got. And so now any questions on that?
No, I think we just got to keep pushing the training managers to keep pushing it out to their people.
So circled around to all of the state training managers I could get and get all their info. The Gridiron New South Wales season has been officially cancelled. Obviously, a lot of the states at the moment is all proposed timings based on their current, obviously, COVID restrictions that are in place. It was deemed that it was going to be too really cost prohibitive and safety related for New South Wales to run a season. We're always keen to run a 6-week preseason, but by just the extension of the lockdowns and the timings, most clubs were not in favour of going past the Christmas period like we did last year. They just found it was too disruptive to their seasons. So the decision was made to cancel the season. Gridiron New South Wales is looking at running a couple other mini events, some flag football, some other game situational type events to keep people engaged and involved. But unfortunately, the actual season as it is will be cancelled. And as Paul mentioned earlier, there might be opportunities depending on restrictions for us to go to other states. But at the moment, there's nothing for us until possibly maybe a flag season around the February, March, if we can get that up and running. The 1st of July was our initial cutoff date. And then there was eight Div 1, about 8 Colts and about 6 women's teams.
Okay.
So we're looking at whatever that was. What's that? 20 odd teams. So they were looking at doing the same thing we've done the last couple of years, is 2 venues and 4 to 5 games at each venue. And what we've tried to do over the last couple of years is just have our AGOA officials only do maximum of 2, maybe 3 if they're two Colts games a day, just to we don't want people doing 4 or 5 games a day. It's just too hard. The ACT currently at the moment is looking at starting their season on the 18th of September and finishing by the 11th of December with 3 Div 1s and 2 Colts. Obviously, with the current restrictions, they could be postponed or delayed with the start of their season. South Australia is looking at starting theirs on the 18th of September and finishing around the 12th, 4 Div 1 teams this year. And you'll see a common theme actually coming through most of these states. Queensland has a hard go, no go on the 11th of September. So they'll be, by then they'll know what's happening with their season.
So Greg, can I give you an update on that?
Yep.
I've just heard that Queensland have said that basically as long as they can get 3 rounds in before Christmas, they will have a season. At this point, they're looking for fairly good for 6 men's teams, 4 to 6 junior teams, and 3 women's teams.
Okay. So, I mean, that shows you how quickly things change. Would that mean they're still looking at finishing their Sun Bowl by before Christmas for the southeastern Queensland?
They're the same as ACT, that they're looking for a hard finish date of the 11th of September. The December.
Regional Queensland looking at starting theirs around the 16th of October and finishing around end of Feb with 7 Div 1 teams and 2 women's. That's the Rockhampton, the Townsville type areas. And Victoria looking at starting, like everybody else, around the 11th of September. Probably highly unlikely with the current restrictions in place.
I can tell you that's gone. And GB are having another meeting this coming Sunday to review the situation. Now, originally they had the 25th of September, which is the grand final weekend, scheduled as a bye. So that looks as though that will no longer be a bye. So they could start as early as the 18th. They may not start until the 25th. They may not start until the 2nd of October, depending upon, obviously, our current 2-week extension of the lockdown, whether that gets extended further. So expect an update after this Sunday evening. And to me, it's looking almost certain that we'll be going post-Christmas.
So will that mean you guys will have a break and then?
Yeah, it'll be a split season. And they've said that they don't want to come back after the new year and just have the finals. So they would probably perhaps even start later so that they end up with a true split season of sort of half the season before Christmas and half the season after.
I would imagine, with having no season last year, they'll probably do as much as they can to have some sort of season this year, because two years without a season would be very detrimental.
We'll be starting like around the 8th of October. It'll be a short season, 10 games for each team, ending just like around the 17th of December. Then we have a break for Christmas, and then the playoffs and the bowl games will be sometime in January.
Out of curiosity, Gavin, do you know when's your season generally run? I mean, you guys are pretty open down there at the moment, aren't you, across there?
Our season was planning to start in October. That's when rugby and league finishes here. And we normally start with flag football here first. So we can do flag football at level 2. So hopefully we're at level 2 or level 1 at that stage.
Okay, cool. And then does your season go into the new year?
It does. So in Auckland here, the plan is to run what we call our elite 11-man contact season after Christmas and finish around sort of Super Bowl time.
Okay, cool. So yeah, they're the dates that we've got. And obviously, depending on restrictions and depending on, changes to various states' competitions, hopefully there'll be opportunities for, those of us that don't have games to travel around it and, participate in some.
So, I mean, that's giving you a good look at what we've got. As I said, what I plan to do with this session now is I'll get the recording of it. I'll turn it into a short kind of 15-20 minute prezzo that we can kind of send out to everybody. and say, see you at the next one. The next one I'm planning will be Mark Louis going to do a presentation on flag football. And it's not going to be, here are the details of the rules and here are the details of mechanics. No, it's going to be what flag football is about. And we'll probably have somebody from New Zealand talking about their weekend competitions and things like that, to try and get people interested in the fact that, you know, it's not the kind of game that Paul and I can officiate anymore, but it's definitely something for the younger guys to get their teeth around. Unless you and I are thinking about doing it from 20 yards and throwing flags with a 40mm grenade launcher, Paul.
But also with flag, there's you know, with the push of getting it even to the Olympics and or whether it gets there or not, you know, there's IFAF do regular World Cups. There's, you know, other opportunities to do.
That's what I want to engender. That's exactly what I want to engender, Greg. That, you know, this is something that's becoming more important internationally. It's the part of the game we can possibly sell. Thank you for watching this video, which we hope has brought you up to date with what's going on at AGOA. Also, giving you some ideas about keeping up to date with your refereeing, ready for the next football season. And also, what resources are available to you to help you get ready. We hope you found it useful. Our next session will be regarding the future of flag football in Australia and New Zealand. That will be live at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 31st of August. And we'll provide a recording of it afterwards. But we'd much rather see you there. Thank you, and see you next time.